Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Point Zero Games. I hope you guys had a great pre-release weekend. For Tuesday today, I wanted to talk to you guys about just that, M15. M15 is going to be coming out this coming Friday, which means it's going to be available for Friday Night Magic. And some of you are probably asking yourselves, well, what can I expect coming up on Friday? Because maybe I haven't looked into it too much, or maybe you have looked into it and you're just not really sure where some stuff is going to quite fit. Well, today I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the things that you might be able to expect seeing in some of the top decks that are in the standard format at this time. Again, I'm only going to be covering a few select decks because these are the big decks that most people will see in overall competitive play. You'll probably see these being the top 8 decks: Mono Black Devotion, Mono Blue Devotion, anything green red basically. Naya and Boros are the ones that I'm going to be focusing on today. If there's other decks that you'd be curious about, by all means, you can leave us some comments down in the bottom, and I have no problem with talking to you guys about that. Tuesdays are typically going to be discussion days, so that way we can talk about some things like that. So, today, things that you can expect walking into F&M on Friday. So, let's start with Mono Black Devotion. Mono Black Devotion right now is very much considered to be the top deck, but it's starting to lose a lot of ground to things like Naya Aggro, to Boros Burn, and to Esper Control. With rotation coming up pretty soon, Esper Control is going to be losing things like Supreme Verdict and Sphinx's Rev, which puts Mono Black in a pretty decent place to start inching its way back up top. However, Mono Black's going to be losing a couple of cards whenever rotation hits when Khans of Tarkir comes out. So let's look at some of the things that we might see taking the place of those. For starters, Desecration Demon's going to be going out when rotation hits, and needless to say, M15 brings us Indulgent Tormentor. So rather than a 4-drop 6/6 demon that is going to make you sacrifice in order to tap the creature and keep it from swinging at you in the air, the Indulgent Tormentor instead is a 5-drop 5/3 that essentially starts working the next time your upkeep comes up. So there is going to be a 1-turn differential on that being on the board. However, when it comes back to you, you draw a card unless the target opponent sacrifices a creature or pays 3 life. I know we've talked a ton about this over pre-release, and he was a bomb in pre-release. Going into standard, can we expect to see that going into mono black decks? The answer on that is kind of. Given that D-Demon is still going to be in standard format for a few more months, it still is a much stronger card. It comes out in a quicker pace. It becomes immediately relative to the target player because of the fact that the moment you put that 6/6 body on there, it means that if they want to throw a Storm Breath onto the board, then they're going to have to really consider whether they want to be able to swing with that and actually get some damage through, or if they want to hold off on it and then you start slowing down their deck. So Indulgent Tormentor doesn't have that same problem. Given that it's a 5/3, it means it dies to a lot of stuff, and Storm Breath is definitely one of the biggest flyers that's in there right now. As a matter of fact, it not only dies to Storm Breath, it dies to Prognostic Sphinx, which is a much slower card, but it is also a 5-drop, but it's a 3/5. So these are things to consider. While that is a thing to consider, you also have to take into account that that card forces negative conditions on your opponent. So you don't even necessarily have to block with it or anything of the sort. It is immediately viable the minute it comes on the board. Now, it's not as immediately viable as something like Mogus, God of Slaughter, but it's still going to be viable. And if they don't respond to it, then they have to make that option, and it's negative no matter which way they go. So Indulgent Tormentor could be a possible replacement for D-Demon if we don't see anything better in Khans of Tarkir once rotation hits. But right now I think D-Demon's in a pretty safe spot. But you could see some people starting to drop Indulgent Tormentors into the deck. Who knows? Next, let's talk about discard. Discard is a huge thing that people are talking about for mono black, namely because of 3 cards. Number 1, Mind Rot's been reprinted, so we're going to have that for another year. Kind of here or there. My script, by the way, so that way I can know what I'm talking about. We got Mind Rot, we've got Liliana Vess, which has been reprinted. This is huge for mono black players. They finally have a Planeswalker that they can play within their color scheme without having to splash in either white or green like we've seen with Devotion to Golgari and Devotion to Orzhov. And even then, in the Orzhov decks, we haven't really seen any real white planeswalkers getting thrown in there, but this gives black a really strong option. Liliana's +1 gives them the ability to discard a card. Her first minus gives them the ability to semi-tutor a card. Now, they're not going to get to throw it in their hand or on the battlefield, but they do get to search for a card that they want, put it at the top of their library. So it's, like I said, it's semi-tutor. It does mean that they're open to scry hate. So if you have ways to cause scry hate against the enemy, then it does put mono black at a slight disadvantage. But the chances of that honestly happening, unless you're running an overall control deck, is going to be really slim. And then beyond that, the ult on Liliana Vess just makes mono black out of this world. Being able to take all the creature cards from graveyards, put them onto the battlefield under your control is massive in any matchup that you do. The last thing you want a mono black player to do is have all the creatures. That's the worst position to be in. And it's especially terrible if you might happen to have, I don't know, a pack rat sitting in that graveyard. Definitely think about it. So Liliana Vess is really strong for the deck. Waste Not is the biggest reason that people are talking about discard. This is the card that was designed by the overall Magic community. It is a 2-drop enchantment, and there are multiple different effects that happen based on the cards that your opponent is forced to discard. The two biggest ones are going to be that you could either put down a 2/2 zombie creature, or you can end up getting 2 mana in your mana pool. Now, both of these are really big because mono black players want creatures on the board as often as they possibly can to help prevent some of their life loss and set up for Grey Merchant to be able to bomb in and give them the life back they need, or to get Whip of Erebos on the board and start swinging with the D-Demon. This just gives them a chance to be able to chump block and get 2 life off of that because of the Whip of Erebos. The last piece, which is where they get to draw a card whenever they discard a non-creature, non-land, is also very powerful because one of the other things that mono black players like is card advantage. It's one of the reasons that Underworld Connections is still a staple in that deck. And with Ravnica going out, it means that they have to find another way to get that card draw. Waste Not could potentially be the way that they could do that, but we don't know quite yet. So do I think that these cards are worth it in mono black? I think Waste Not has a place in a mono black deck. I just don't know where you would put it right now. What do you take out to put that in? I'm not sure. We'll definitely be seeing by the time Friday comes around. With Liliana Vess, I can definitely see that being a 2-of in the deck, possibly a 3-of. It's got a lot of power that synergizes with everything that black wants to do. And then finally with Mind Rot, you might see some budget players throwing it in there alongside some Liliana Vess because of how cheap she's going to be to get your hands on. I don't know if it's going to be something that a lot of the top competitive players are going to be putting in their decks. So that's still kind of up in the air. Going alongside the discard, Black Cat has been reprinted. This is another thing that could be huge. With Pack Rat going out, it means that mono black is going to need some form of low drop black stopper that will be able to work like Pack Rat, except you're not going to get that increasing power and toughness. Pack Rat is special because it allows you to just beef up your board constantly over and over. If you've got dead cards in your hand, like a Doomblade playing against mono black, drop the Doomblade out, get a Pack Rat, get more power on the board. Black Cat's not going to give you more power on the board, but it does give you the ability to force them again to discard. Makes Waste Not have way more value than it already has available to it through cards like Mind Rot and Liliana Vess. So you could potentially see some mono black players starting to use Black Cat. When it was originally in Standard, people played it. There's a chance that it can make a comeback. Where is it going to fit in the deck? I don't know, because again, Pack Rat's still legal, so that's a very difficult call to make. Moving onward, let's talk about Ob Nixilis the Unshackled. Everybody's been talking about the card. First off, props to Brad Muir over at Double Fine. I love Double Fine's games. I love Brad Muir's games. Loved Iron Brigade. Can't wait for Massive Chalice to come out. And that dude's always smiling, which the moment that I found out that he designed the Ob Nixilis card, I thought of that big smile that he has on his face all the time. Seriously, there's a thread over a Giant Bomb of nothing but Brad Muir smiling and things that look like him. He is smiling so much that when I saw that card, I thought of him staring at somebody with that smile and thinking, yeah, I went there. So Ob Nixilis is going to see play forever in multiple different formats, namely because he is anti-library search. Now, a lot of people have started speculating that, this Ob Nixilis basically says that fetch lands will be getting printed in Khans of Tarkir. Nobody knows that. If I wanted to take a guess, I'd say the dream is real, but we don't have confirmation of that. However, there are a lot of other search library effects that we've found inside of the Theros block, as well as M15. We've seen quite a bit of that stuff. For instance, another card that fits into the black as well as just a mirror overall is Disciple of Deceit. This gives you the ability to tutor cards. It is something that I've been playtesting around with a ton because I really want to make a deck centered around that card. I love it. Ob Nixilis causes 10 life to be lost just for using that card. So he is expensive. He's a 6-drop. Where does he fit in a mono black deck? He can fit as a 1-of in the deck. Because if you have some of the other cards like Liliana that can semi-tutor for you, you get a lot of strength and capability out of a card like Ob Nixilis. So yeah, and on top of which, anytime a creature dies, he gets a +1/+1 counter. So he's a 6-drop 4/4, but you're black. You run Hero's Downfall Ultimate Price, most likely Ulcerate, which is another card that got printed for black. It's a 1-drop instant speed spell. Target creature gets -3/-3. You lose 3 life. You're playing black. You don't care if you lose life. That's what you do. 1-drop removal for 3. Insanity. And the ability to use a 1-drop to buff up Ob Nixilis makes it even bigger. On top of which, Ob Nixilis has Trample, which means that if you get that 1/1 counter, swing it at Storm Breath, they can stop you with just a 4/4 not going monstrous, but you're going to get trample damage. So Ob Nixilis has a lot of strength, but as more than a 1 or a 2 of in the deck, I don't see that necessarily happening. Post-rotation, we'll have to see where he sits. Really, when it comes down to it, that card is really strong in Commander. That's where Ob Nixilis is going to shine the most because people love tutoring inside of Commander. People love searching their library for stuff. I see it every day. So absolutely, Ob Nixilis could have a place in Standard, but Commander is where he's going to shine. Next, let's talk about Stain the Mind. I've had a lot of people ask me about Stain the Mind. Do you think mono black players are going to play it? Number 1, it's in black. Number 2, it forces them to remove whatever win con you announce. If you're playing against a Naya deck, you call Perforos. You take away their win con. Yes, people are absolutely going to play this in mono black. It will most likely be as a sideboard card, but the fact that Slaughter Games and Memoricide and Surgical, all of that stuff, that's what this card is. It's about getting rid of the big win con. Now, against mono blue, it's not going to be so strong because, unlike Slaughter Games, it can be countered. However, that doesn't mean that it isn't strong. Moreover, it has Convoke. So as a 5-drop, it's a 4 colorless and 1 black. It means that you can tap out one of your little weak 1/1s, like a Black Cat if you needed to, or a Pack Rat token. You can tap one of those. Pack Rat tokens are perfect. They are an exact copy, right? So you can just tap one of those. You still have the power on the Pack Rats, and yet you're going to get 1 mana off of that. Now, given that you're running mono black, the 4 colorless is still going to exist. However, as a sideboard card, this will absolutely see play throughout the rest of mono black's life in this standard format. Absolutely. Last but not least, I've also had people ask me about 2 other cards. Covenant of Blood. It's a 7-drop Convoke, in case you haven't seen it. 7-drop Convoke, 6 colorless mana. It deals 4 damage to target creature or player, and you gain 4 life. Will people play this in mono black? No. It's too much mana. It is way too much mana for way too little. This is basically a Mizium Mortars. This is double Pharika's Cure. You can get the same thing out of 2 Pharika's Cure for 3 less mana. Not worth it. Yes, you can convoke it down, but you'll only get to convoke it by 1. and that's not going to be worth it. 6 for 4 damage and 4 life, not worth it. You're not going to see Covenant of Blood inside of Mono Black anytime soon. Mark my words on that. If somebody ends up proving me wrong, cool, but I just do not see Covenant of Blood showing up. Sign in Blood, on the other hand, while we're talking about Blood, Sign in Blood's going to see play for the entirety of this rotation and the next rotation. Absolutely. It's card draw. It's 2 cards, lose 2 life. I'm playing black. I don't care about the life. Give me my cards. That card is going to be in the deck. Now, Read the Bones is still just a slight bit better. I will say that much. You get to scry 2 and then draw 2 off of that for 3, and you still lose the same 2 life. So it still has a little bit more to it, but it is 3 mana, which means that on turn 4, would I rather be spending 2 to just draw 2 and lose 2, or would I rather be spending 3? I could put out an additional pack rat. I could have mana open for an ultimate price. I could end up having a lot of options with that 2 mana open. That's a Doomblade. So I definitely think people will start playing Sign in Blood a little bit more than Read the Bones, despite the fact that Read the Bones is overall a stronger spell for only 1 more mana. Basically what Sign in Blood says, because of the two hard cast, is this is not the splashable card you're looking for. Read the Bones is going to be that card. If you're playing some blue, Divination is going to be that card. Over here, we've got Sign in Blood and Mono Black. We've got a little bit of an advantage over that. So that's the Mono Black stuff that I've been looking at, and that I've had people ask me about. A couple of other things that people have asked me is the possibility of Dimir getting a little bit stronger. Basically, Dimir has always been kind of relegated to this idea of milling cards. However, if you look at some of the stuff that's been in the last couple of sets in the Theros block, it seems like they're trying to push Dimir towards semi-mill with more tutoring and a bit more hand control. For instance, like I had mentioned before, Disciple of Deceit. It's a card that when it untaps, it's Inspired Trigger. When it untaps, you get to search your library for a card. You discard a card, search your library for a card with the same converted mana cost. This is really strong, and yet nobody has really found the right way to get that card to work. Maybe Convoke ends up being the answer, and we could start seeing Mono Black trying to possibly splash blue the same way that we're seeing them splash green to get Abrupt Decay and Vraska in, or splashing white to get Blood Baron and Obsidat in. Who knows? Also, Psychic Intrusions. This is a card that a lot of people haven't said a whole lot about, but coming out of the Block Constructed Pro Tour from Journey into Nyx, we saw a lot of bug decks, and a lot of them were throwing in Psychic Intrusions. There's a very specific reason for that. It's because it is a Thoughtseize that lets you take control of that card. It lets you cast the card. You're not going to run this as more than a 1 of, or maybe even a 2 of inside of a deck. But even though it's 5 mana, that's 5 mana that you're going to be able to get a win con out of their hand, and then you're going to get to use it. Being able to play in a Mono Black or a Dimir type of setting and then get an Elspeth is super strong for you. Being able to do that and get even a Chandra or an Architect of Thought is really, really strong for you. So I could absolutely see people trying to fit that in as a possibility, especially with a lot of what we're seeing in the discard meta. Forcing them to discard their lame cards means that you can Psychic Intrusion in order to get their big card. So definitely a possibility. Jace Living Guild Pact. A lot of people have asked if Mono Black leans more towards Dimir, will Living Guild Pact work? Kind of. He doesn't really fit a whole lot of the Dimir ideal. He's still very much going to be a control card. He's just not going to be as strong as Architect of Thought was. The fact that he forces you to throw some cards in a graveyard means that you're going to have to use some form of dredge mechanics to get those cards out. Or for a control player, you use something like Elixir of Immortality. So there's a couple of options there, but for going into the Dimir, the double blue already tells me that that's kind of a rough idea, so not too sure about that. So moving on, let's talk about some Mono Blue Devotion. Mono Blue Devotion, Jace's Living Guild Pack, he's going to be in there. Is he going to be in there over Architect of Thought right now? Maybe not. You may see him as a 1 or a 2 of, but Architect of Thought is still going to be the main Planeswalker you want inside of that. you're not going to be throwing in a ton of Living Guild Pack, because in a mono blue deck, you want to make sure that you're keeping the cards that you get. You don't want them going to the graveyard. In a mono blue devotion deck, everything is tempoed in such a way that you want to ensure you are never going to have to put a card in the graveyard if you can help it. And so that's kind of one of where the big problems comes in, is the rest of Jace outside of that +1 doesn't offer a ton of advantage. You can get a bounce, but Void Snare, Into the Void, Cyclonic Rift, Aether Spouts all exist in the standard up until Khans of Tarkir. Why would you bother throwing in a ton of a guild Planeswalker just so that way you can pop what's a -3 to bounce something? It's inefficient. It doesn't work as well as just going Void Snare, Into the Void, or whatever else you can come up with. So I don't think that you're going to see a lot of Living Guild Pack, but you'll definitely see them inside of mono blue decks. Next, let's talk about Aether Spouts and Into the Void and Void Snare. Aether Spouts you could definitely see going into the deck. It's a cheaper way to do a Cyclonic Rift, although it's only to creatures and it's only to ones that are attacking. So a 5-drop instant that's going to only target the attacking creatures, that's pretty neat. But the special part of it, the thing that makes it a little bit better than the Cyclonic Rift, is that you're not necessarily bouncing them back to the hand. You're bouncing to the library. So it's really interesting because you get to determine things about a deck that your opponent does not want you to get to determine. Aether Spouts is really strong all around, and I do like the card. I'm definitely trying to collect up my playset of them, and I do think that it's going to be very standard playable. You could see it going into mono blue relatively quick, but it may only be at maybe a 2 of, because I still do think that while Aether Spouts is nice, Cyclonic Rift does hold a bit more value to it. It's more splashable. Granted, you're playing mono blue, so you don't really have to worry about whether you have the blue mana available or anything like that. But at a 7-drop, it does get Planeswalkers off of the board, resets their loyalty counters, gets things like Ratchet Bomb off the board, gets things like just so many things that it can drop off the board. I still feel like Cyclonic Rift might be a little bit more powerful, but Aether Spouts is no slump. It is a great card, and you'll definitely see it showing up in some mono blue decks. Same thing with Void Snare and Into the Void. There's a really good chance that you'll see those coming in. Now, Void Snare is going to be a 1-drop sorcery bounce. It's not an instant, so that is kind of okay. Into the Void, however, we've got that as a 3-drop bounce, and it puts 2 creatures back. That's still not going to be terrible. But in the long run, Aether Spouts, I mean, you have to rely on them attacking with everything, right? So through all of this, this is very situational removal. Cyclonic Rift is still better all around. But once Cyclonic Rift is out of rotation, like, what are we going to use? Those 3 cards are going to start showing up in mono blue decks unless we see something as powerful as Cyclonic Rift showing up again. I just don't think we're going to. I think Aether Spouts is the direction they're going to go with that, because they want to use it as a much more defensive spell than as an offensive spell. Beyond that, let's talk about Dissipate. Dissipate got reprinted. It's going to get played, guys. It will get played. I don't think it'll get played right now, namely because Syncopate still exists. Syncopate turn 2 kills out a Domri Raid. It turn 2 kills out a Boros Reckoner. It turn 2 kills out an Ashiok. It gets rid of a lot of the early game threats that are necessary. It gets rid of Skoos. It gets rid of a Sylvan Caryatid to help with Green Red's mana ramp. I don't know if we're going to see Dissipate getting played so hard in a mono blue deck. Control players, on the other hand, are eating themselves alive because they get another counter spell. Give blue-white control decks more control. Come on now. Yeah, you will see some of them getting played probably in the sideboard, most likely. They may throw them in the main board, but I don't really know where we can go with that one. I still think Syncopate is a fairly strong card, but once you get past that turn 4, Syncopate starts losing a little bit more of its value piece by piece by piece. Next, let's talk about Turn to Frog and Polymorphous Jest. Will people run Turn to Frog? No. Turn to Frog is terrible. I know what you're saying. Josh, you're insane. Turn to Frog is great. Turn to Frog is terrible, and here's why. Turn to Frog is a 1-drop? No, it's a 2-drop. Turn to Frog is a 2-drop to turn one creature into a 1/1. Polymorphous Jests is a 3-drop to turn all creatures into a 1/1. Turn to Frog is good. It's decent because of the fact that you can use it to single target out if they're throwing one thing at you and you get to save 1 mana. However, there's very few times that I can think of where somebody's only throwing one attacker at you. This card is meant to be used in only 2 ways. You are using it to stop a lot of big things from swinging really big and instead just being 1/1s. Or you are using this in order to force everything to become 1/1s, then remove. That's really your 2 biggest reasons to be using those. And Turn to Frog just isn't as strong as Polymorphous Jests in the long run. It's really curious that they ended up printing both of them in the same set, because I feel like overall Polymorphous Jests is just a stronger card. So yeah, maybe Mono Blue will play it. I don't see it happening, guys. Chasm Skulker, let's talk about him. So Chasm Skulker is a really interesting creature. He comes out as a 1/1, and then every time you draw a card, he gets a 1/1 counter. Whenever he dies, you put X 1/1 squid tokens onto the battlefield equal to the number of 1/1 counters that were on Chasm Skulker. Will you see this in Mono Blue decks? There are guys that are going to use it. I'm not going to say that a ton of them are going to use it, but there are definitely people that will start using that card. It is powerful, and if it doesn't get responded to immediately, turn 2, you're already going to get another 1/1. So it pays for itself off of the first card that you draw. Moreover, Mono Blue runs things like Divination or even a potential Biden of Thassa. These things allow for card draw, and it's not whenever, it's not if you draw 2 cards, it's only going to get 1 counter. It's whenever you draw a card. So if it says draw 2 cards, draw a card, 1/1 counter, draw a card, 1/1 counter. It adds value to Divination. It adds value to Jace's Ingenuity. Hell, it adds value to Opportunity. 4 counters to get 4 1/1s is really disgusting. And moreover, the more beautiful thing is, if you wanted to, you could destroy it yourself. You're Mono Blue. Rapid hybridization is still a thing. Yeah, you could kill your own creature off, get a 3/3 out of it, and you'll get all those 1/1s on your board. It's disgusting the power that Chasm Skulker has inside of a Mono Blue deck, especially because the biggest thing that Mono Blue relies on is that big Master of Waves bomb. And right now, as it stands, there's a white card that's going in that stops the enter the battlefield condition of Master of the Waves. So you're going to have to find a way to be able to get around that sideboard. Chasm Skulker could very easily see standard play. I can absolutely expect that to happen. So that's the Mono Blue stuff that I've been looking at. Next, let's talk about Green-Red. Green-Red is obviously, let's be real. It's what most people play because big things hitting really hard is really fun, guys. Everybody loves it. What can we expect to see coming out of Green-Red? A lot of it is going to be in the green section, not so much in the red section. First, let's talk about one thing in the red section. Generator Servant. Will people be playing it in green-red? Yes. Move on. That's all you got to say. 2-drop, 2/1 that I can use to sacrifice, get 2 colorless, and then on turn 3, make ridiculous, hasty things happen. Yeah, it's going to get played. Green-red loves mana ramp. That's mana ramp. Hell yes. We'll definitely see it. Next card, let's look at Ancient Silverback. Now, Ancient Silverback is a really interesting card to have coming in at this time, given that Devotion is such a huge thing for Green Devo players as well as Green-Red players. I mean, I know Green-Red guys that run Nykthos, because when you've got a Mystic, a Caryatid, a Courser on board, tapping 3 for 4 is not a terrible idea. So having something like an Ancient Silverback is really good in the deck, namely for two reasons. One, because you're green. You can get him out fast. He's a turn 4 play in most instances. And number two, he regens for 1 green mana. That means that a lot of the cards that are out there, like Hero's Downfall and Ultimate Price, Dreadbore, all these removal cards that are out there, regen. And it doesn't cost you a ton. In mono green, you always have mana, right? In green red, you always have mana. So getting the 1 green to regen him isn't that hard. And he's a 6/5 body. He hits harder than Pelucranos does, unless you monstrous Pelucranos. Do I see him going to green-red decks? I see people experimenting with him, and I see a lot of budget green-red decks and green decks definitely playing him because he is a strong, strong reprint. He is a reprint, I believe. He may not be a reprint. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't come back in until Dragon's Maze. What the hell do I know, right? I like the card. I liked him in Limited. I like him for Standard. Next, let's talk about Netcaster Spider. It's a 3-drop 2/3 that blocks out Storm Breath. It kills Storm Breath. Yeah, there's going to be budget decks that'll play it. Will the higher end decks play it? Maybe. Maybe not. It's really dependent. I could see Green Devo starting to run them in there, but right now I think they're so hung up on Elvish Mystic, Sylvan Caryatid, Courser, Eidolon of Blossoms, Pelucranos, and Arbor Colossus that I just don't know where they're going to put that into the deck. Green can be control-y, but I don't know if that control is really the way they want to end up going. But I do like the card. It blocks out Storm Breath as long as he's not monstrous. That's really strong. Court of Calling. It's a strong reprint, guys. I mean, it's sitting at $15 for a reason. It makes Commander ridiculous. It makes Modern fairly ridiculous. In Standard, what are you going to do? He tutors. Like, it's a tutor card in green. The 3 green hardcast on the mana worries me a little bit about its overall playability in green-red. In mono-green, I think it's really strong. In green-red, it could be strong solely because you could end up using some of your guys to tap down some of that green. So there's a possibility in that. There's a lot of people that are really excited about putting it in there. Here's the real question that I have, is it's only going to tutor creature cards. So how strong is it really? Because if you want a Pelucranos, you're going to have to pay 7 mana or tap however many creatures and pay. That's a lot of mana to pay to get a Pelucranos. So, I mean, really you have to consider, like, what's the overall mana cost with the Convoke cost included compared to what I can get. You can't get a Domri out of it. You can't get a Xenagos out of it. You could get a Xenagod out of it, I guess. Like, it's really difficult for me to understand exactly where the place is for that in Standard. Maybe there's other places that I'm not thinking of, but in green-red decks, it'll be decent. I think in Jund it could be a little bit stronger, but overall, not super excited for it in Standard. In Modern and inside of Commander, this thing is huge. So, yeah, I mean, that card's not going down anytime soon. Give it about a month or two and you'll start seeing it slip probably. Siege Dragon, will people get play it in green-red? I could easily see it being a sideboard card. A lot of people have said no, but it's 7-drop in green-red. That's not that big of a deal. That's turn 5. That's turn 4 if a Generator Servant's on the board. Like, being able to throw a 5/5 dragon on the board is good no matter what. Stormbreath's a 4/4 for 5. I mean, people play him. He can get bigger. He's got haste. He's got flying. He is already a good card. A 7-drop 5/5 isn't that far off from it. But what's more important is that when it comes in, it destroys walls. Guess what? People are going to play Wall of Essence. People are going to play Wall of Mulch. People are going to play Wall of Limbs. They're going to play the walls that are in here. People are going to play Wall of Fire. It's an 0/5 defender with fire breathing. Absolutely, they're going to play that card. Walls have always been something that people like inside of Standard as long as the abilities are strong. Wall of Mulch particularly gives card draw to green. Why wouldn't green try to run that? It's an 0/4 defender on top of that. I mean, we already use an 0/3 defender for mana fixing. Why not use one for card draw? It's actually a little bit more efficient than Eidolon of Blossoms in the long run because we get to choose when we want the card draw, which means that if we're scrying and we see something we like, or if we Domri and see something we like, we can get that. Wall of Mulch ends up being a really strong card. Siege Dragon hitting the board, Wall of Mulch is gone. And then as long as you got no walls on the board, swing and it deals 2 to everybody. This is something that will definitely be sideboard playable as a 1 or a 2 of, just as an overall board wipe against weenie decks. I could very easily see people throwing this into a sideboard, and those pre-releases, those pre-release promo copies starting to get a little bit more valuable in the long run. But is it a great card? Yeah, it's okay. Burning Anger. This one is interesting. It's an aura that basically grants Follow the Hammer, so you can tap the creature, have it deal its power to target creature. It's a 5-drop enchantment aura. Do I think people will play it in Standard? There's a possibility of that. It's a good card. For 5 mana, being able to give somebody the power to do that consistently is really nice. Moreover, it gives more value to your overall big creatures. Pelucranos not only is going to be able to monstrous to deal damage, but on top of that, he can use that special to deal damage to something. So, yeah, I could see people trying to use it inside of green-red. It does run a tad bit slow at 5 mana, but again, it's in green-red. Your chances of getting that on turn 3 or 4 on something that can make it matter, like even a Scavenging Ooze that's already buffed 2 counters on it, it's still really strong. So I could see green-reds trying to put it in, absolutely. Reclamation Sage, is it going to get played? Yeah, it's Artifact and Enchantment Destroy on a stick. It's definitely going to see play. There's a reason it's a game day promo card with full art. And by the way, if you haven't seen that, you should go look at it. It's gorgeous. I pulled a foil Reclamation Sage out of the pre-release, as well as a Polymorphous Jest. I plan on playing Reclamation Sage in the sideboard of any green that I use. Yes, it doesn't get rid of gods, but we have Unravel the Aether to handle something like that. Reclamation Sage is going to be good for Waste Not. It's going to be good for Banishing Light, D-Sphere. All of these cards that have been causing us so many problems, we have an answer, and it also puts a body on the board. Absolutely no reason Reclamation Sage won't get played inside of Standard. Definitely sideboard. Some people may end up mainboarding her. Mark my words, Reclamation Sage is dope. Beyond that, let's talk about Planeswalkers. Nissa. Will people play it in green? Of course. People want to make her work in green. Do I like her in green? I like the ability to untap 4 forests, because with Shockland still being in Standard, that's a really, really strong ability to have. Green always wants more mana. More mana means casting more things. We love mana. Give us all the mana. You are not allowed to have any of it. Give it all to us, okay? I love green. I love mana. Nissa gives me that capability. Turning 4/4s into elementals is good. I know a lot of people are like, oh no, it's super great. But you have to remember it's still a land. And you're opening yourself up for a real big disappointment when somebody decides to go Ultimate Price or Hero's Downfall or whatever they want to remove it. Now, it doesn't die to Ulcerate, which is good, but it does die to Amizium Mortars. And green-red matchup, you're going to face Mizium Mortars. And overloaded Mizium Mortars screws your mana base pretty hard, man. So I like it for the ability to untap forests more than I like it for the ability to make 4/4s. But the 4/4s are still powerful, and especially if you plan on running something dumb like Perilous Vault, which destroys non-land permanents. And elementals are still considered lands. So you're going to board wipe somebody while you keep a shitload of 4/4s on the board. Yeah. That's why Perilous Vault's worth a little bit. So if you're planning on something like that, sure. Nissa's got a little bit more value to her, but overall, she's going to drop in price once green players end up actually looking at her and realizing that the 4/4s aren't going to be as powerful as they thought. It's very much the same way that you see a lot of people playing Xenagos in green-red, but it's not about the 2/2s. Granted, those are 2/2s, these are 4/4s, but they are, again, at a disadvantage because you are using your lands for it. So I like it, but I need some play testing with it before I decide that it's the end-all, be-all. I do like the card overall, though, and it'll definitely see play in Standard. You'll see green players playing it, absolutely. Alongside that, You're also going to see him playing Scuttling Doom Engine because that dude's a thing. He's a 6-drop 6/6. When he dies, you take 6 damage. That sucks. It is huge because it means that if you want to remove this big nasty dude, you're still going to take the damage that he deals. Unless you've got some way to prevent that, that's strong, man. Excuse me, I have to towel myself off. I'm sweating bullets over here, guys. This light is something else. I am really sorry about that. That is so unprofessional, and I am so sorry. I just sweat like a pig. Anyways, back to conversation. Scuttling Doom Engine. The other thing that's nice about it, it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, which means you can't chump block it with Elspeth tokens. You're going to have to lose one of your big dudes if you want to do it. You're going to have to most likely double block if you want to get rid of them, and even then, you're going to lose 2 creatures out of it and take 6 damage. That's really, really tough to deal with. I got to towel myself off again. It's just a nonstop. It's just nonstop. It just goes forever, man. Sweat. Damn lights. This is what I get for trying to look professional for you guys. I hope you appreciate it. Yeah, Scuttling Doom Engine. It's going to show up in big stuff. Solanu Phyrexia. Guess what? It's going to show up in big stuff. The guys that play green-red want Solanu Phyrexia to work for them because they need a way to get around the board wipes. This is their answer to Supreme Verdict. That's big. But control players are going to have Perilous Vault. So now you got to figure out another way to get around them, guys. It's not going to be easy. Maybe Splash Black. Ah, Jund. There we go. Now let's talk about Jund a little bit because that's in a green-red spectrum. Jund specifically. Putrefy is going to be your best damn friend. Friend. I'm a southern boy and I say friend. It's friend. Putrefy is going to have a big place in main boards now because of the fact that it has to get rid of Perilous Vault. As long as they don't have the mana to be able to cast it, you're going to be able to get it off the board safely, and you're not going to have to worry about losing everything with the Solanu Phyrexia on the board. But if they get to pop that thing off, Solanu Phyrexia's indestructible capabilities don't serve you any purpose. However, green-red players, they're still going to try and get Solanu Phyrexia to work. 6-drop for 6/6, or I believe that's what it is. That's good. Being able to turn everything indestructible, it's fine. It costs a little bit though, so you better hope to Criminy that you've got the mana to be able to pop that the minute that he gets out, because people are going to try and remove him. If you don't have a way to make him indestructible and everything else immediately, Solanu Phyrexia does not pay off. So think about that. Scuttling Doom Engine might be just a tad bit better. Beyond that, let's look at Wall of Mulch. We already talked about that. Phyrexian Revoker. That's the other one I want to talk about. Not for green decks, but against green decks. This is your worst enemy. He stops your mana ramp. Get this guy off the board as soon as you possibly can. Throw whatever shit you need to get him away. Being able to shut down Elvis Mystic and being able to shut down Sylvan Caryatid is terrible. Now think about him also shutting down your Generator Servants. This is a detriment to the green-red format because mana ramp is so hugely important for all of us. Without the mana ramp, all of a sudden our turn 3 plays, our turn 4 plays of these big monsters start getting shut down. That's a really huge problem. So make sure that you are watching out for that guy because they'll call Sylvan Caryatid and it don't give a damn about that hexproof. All right? Next, let's talk about a couple of other strategies that are popular. I've got a lot left here, guys. I may end up having to make this a 2-part video, and I think I'm going to. So we're going to cut it off here. Next video, we'll have a link in the annotation down over in here somewhere. We're going to go ahead and talk about Naya and Boros strategies, and we're also going to go over Esper and blue-white control. So hopefully you found this video to be informational for you. I wasn't expecting this to actually be this long, and I am so terribly sorry for that. But at the same time, as long as it's been informational, it doesn't matter how long it is, right? As long as you guys ended up learning some stuff out of it. So do us a favor, hit the subscribe button and the like button on the video. I never know which side it's on because this is backwards to me. Hit the subscribe and the like buttons so that way you can get all the latest updates from Point Zero Games. Also, do us a favor and leave a comment. There should be a comment question around somewhere in here. Leave us a comment answering that comment question. Talk to us. What do you think you're going to end up seeing inside of the Friday Night Magic meta? What do you think you're going to see in competitive meta? What do you think of the top 8 decks going forward from here? We're going to cut this at 45 minutes, guys. My name is Josh. This is Point Zero Games. I'm wearing a Tool shirt. I love you guys. We will see you in the next video. Remember to click that link. Holla.